Welcome to banddirector.com. Today we are in the home of Maestro Gustav Meier, doing an interview today on his new book, The Score, the Orchestra, and the Conductor. And maybe we might find some other interesting facts about him and his life. And I'd like to thank Oxford University Press for making it possible by putting us in touch with one another today. And so I'd like to start off by thanking you personally for having us here in your home in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And before we get into the book, I understand that some of your earlier roots were with band specifically. Mm-hmm. And would you like to tell us a little bit about those beginnings?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for asking me to do this, Dave. Yeah, I had a great background with bands, that's for sure. I grew up in a small village, and there was not much music except for, there were 2 bands actually, and 3 choirs. And my father played the trumpet in the cavalry, and so he wanted me to learn the trumpet. And so I started out, and then my mother, who had been singing in the chorus, she said, "Why don't you learn the piano?" So I learned both instruments pretty much at the same time when I was quite small. But the most exciting aspect, of course, was to play in a voice band. I'm sorry about the voice band. It was, in those days, was only voice bands. It's the same band now has, of course, girls and boys. But it was a wonderful band, maybe one of the best in Switzerland at the time. And the band director was also the teacher of my father. So he had accepted me. His name was Marschner, which I think was a great name for a conductor. And he was a German, of course, and having come over to Switzerland. And he was terrific. And the band was great. And we played everything. We played Beethoven, we played Sousa, we played entertainment music, we played operas.
With a brass band?
No, that was a mixed band.
A mixed band?
That was a mixed band, yes. I conducted also brass bands later. But so in other words, it sounded just great to play, having friends, of course, walking 2 miles to the rehearsals, and going through all these pieces. I mean, I knew Rigoletto or Traviata before I knew a symphony, because that's what we did, arrangements which were made for bands. And it stayed with me for the whole time. I learned about breathing, I learned about all the wind instruments. And then the piano at the same time became important. And then at one point I decided to go professionally into tone playing. And later, the piano got me sort of excited about becoming a coach in an opera house. My mother was like to sing, and I heard lots of opera. She turned on always the radio stations for great singers. So I ended actually up then in the conservatory as being trained as a student for coach, to be a coach. And that's sort of that's the way it started. And of course, in the past, conductors always started in the opera house. They would play the piano for the operas, and then the conductor would conduct. And you wouldn't get any lessons. You would just sort of watch and be an apprentice. And when the conductor didn't feel too good or had to go somewhere else, you took over. Not being very bossy, but you just sort of were a good traffic cop, and that's the way you learn conducting, which is very different today. We have wonderful schools and wonderful, great teachers. But that's sort of the background. Then of course, things turned very differently when I came to the United States. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether you want to talk about that now, or whether you want to... I think that's enough about the past.
Yeah.
And
well, the one thing that I would like to ask is, so the visual without the instruction was a way of learning by just imitating.
Yes, in a way, that's exactly what it was. Yeah. That's the way he did it when I was playing the piano, or just sitting there and watching and listening. Oh, that's the way it goes, and then you did it. And if the conductor was friendly, then of course you asked him questions. There were different conductors in an opera house all the time, but it was great. I mean, I found the instruction very good. But then of course, when I went to the conservatory to actually study conducting, things opened up, and then I learned about what everyone has to learn about conducting, how to beat the time, and how to study a score, and how to become a good musician, and the whole thing. And it was really very good beginning to start out.
Did you find that when you had to start to learn the proper movement that the visual part helped, or was there a struggle then to learn the conducting a different way?
Well, once I started conducting in earnest, I didn't think about how I looked or anything. That didn't make any difference. The main thing was that how I felt about the music, and what you had to do in order for the orchestra to understand what I was doing and how we should play together. But it was really, I don't want to make a big story about how we look as conductors, but it's important as well, especially today with television and with being exposed so much to the news all the time and filmed regularly, so that it's important. But the main thing really was to learn about the music, number one, and then the conducting became more and more important. And of course, the teaching of conducting, I would have to go to the United States. I came and studied in Tanglewood, and of course, I was enormously impressed with the level of the young musicians there, the orchestra. The singers, I mean, it was just incredible. You know Tanglewood, right?
Yes.
The Boston Symphony's summer place. And I was so excited. I think the student orchestra played as well as the symphony orchestras I knew in Switzerland. And I thought, that's where I have to go. And so after 1 year, I came back to study again in Tanglewood, and then I stayed. And as far as teachers are concerned, I had in the conservatory, had a wonderful teacher. He's a composer, and then Tanglewood came up with this Brazilian conductor, who was, I thought, a really fabulous teacher. He was a very good conductor, conducted, of course, the symphony there, Boston Symphony, and had quite a great career going. But he was a real brainy guy, although he was not just, actually from an educational point of view, he was in a way similar to my background. He didn't really have to learn how to conduct. He just did it. He was a tuba player, and in Brazil, in the army. And then he got somehow, he wanted to conduct, so he went to Tanglewood. And Kusevitsky, who then was the Boston Symphony conductor, took him on under his wings, and he began to get into it, and then he became a very good teacher. And the book didn't actually just happen like that. This is 50 years ago, practically. But when I got a job then at Yale University, I had no idea what I was going to do and how I was going to teach conducting, because what we did was, as I said, it was not very organized. It was kind of do it or this way, imitate, as you mentioned. But the Carvalho was still in my background, and I thought, well, let me make a syllabus about what conducting is all about, and that's the core of the book. And then I began as I got more experienced, I began to write down each new topic I thought that would be interesting to add, and I learned a great deal, of course, from others. And then the American Symphony Orchestra League began to teach, to give conducting courses all over, and I was sometimes hired to be part of it. And then also, as I started teaching conducting, I had guest conductors, and Tanglewood, of course, had incredible array of many conductors who would come in, and you learn from, again, it's all keeping your eyes open and see what's going on and taking it in and then pass it on to the students.
You mentioned something interesting twice, that the Brazilian friend that came to Tanglewood and wanted to learn conducting, and once he got into it, he became a very good teacher.
Right.
He wanted to learn conducting, but but he became a good teacher. You didn't say that he became a good conductor. And teaching seems to be very important to you, and you see, at least I hear that you make the comparison to being a good conductor and a good teacher.
Yeah, I thought that before I started teaching, I had of course conducted, but I thought once I started teaching, I had to make sure that it worked what I was saying, and it made me analytical about the process of conducting, and that made me a better conductor. There's no doubt in my mind that without having gone into teaching, I would not have grown into a good conductor. It would have been a problem. But it is, so that's why actually today, of course, in the United States, I think that's the place where you want to go to study conducting. There's so many wonderful conducting teachers and great programs, great schools, great universities, conservatories. It's just fabulous. And there you find teachers who are really trying to pass on the art of conducting, and they give it lots of thoughts, and they have, we occasionally get together. We have these workshops where we are 2 teachers, sometimes 3 teachers, and we exchange ideas and we learn from the students what they do and what they don't do, and so it's a wonderful process. So you're right. Teaching is important.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, I tell all my conducting students, if you have an opportunity to teach, do. And they say, well, I don't know anything about it. I said, well, that's the way I started, without knowing much about it. But if you start teaching, then you really will get into it. And then you don't have to do it afterwards if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. I wanted to because I got really excited about it. Turned on to teaching, as you would say.
Yes.